Well, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Wholala. Today we have a very special guest for our first interview of the season, and she is a true expert when it comes to all things Doctor Who. She is the co-founder of the Time Ladies, created to give female Doctor Who fans a safe and welcoming space in the Who community. And let me tell you, this Time Lady knows more about Doctor Who than most.
Exactly. She is also the author of the Doctor Who quiz book, the definitive question book for a Whovian, whether you grew up on long scarves or jelly babies or a pinstripe suit and Converse. She was also a member of the Time team for Doctor Who magazine, where she shares her insights and opinions on the show. She's also written several articles for Radio Times covering a multitude of Who topics.
So get ready for an exciting discussion on all things Doctor Who with our brilliant guest today, the one and only Beth Axford.
Woo!
You guys just made me sound really cool. So thanks for that.
You are cool.
They're all you. How are you, Beth?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm really tired because the clocks went forward and now I'm just confused. But yeah, I'm good, thank you. I mean, the sun's out, so I can't complain.
This is literally the first day in I can't remember how long that there was actually like a minute bit of sun. So I feel like we're all suddenly sucking it in.
6
I know,
p.m.
it
with
feels
sun.
like such a change.
Exactly.
Nice.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited to have you with us on Wholala. You're our first proper interview, which, I mean, couldn't ask for a better guest.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and yeah, just to chat to you. I mean, I just like chatting to you guys anyway. Like, I think you're great. So it's just gonna be fun.
Well, I'm so excited. So we first met Beth at the Gallifrey Cabaret, which is a few weeks ago now, which is just this huge, I mean, we've already spoken about it on the podcast, this huge night of like queer cabaret, Doctor Who fans and alcohol. And it was just like, I mean, how did you, it was the best night for me.
Yeah.
It is just the best, isn't it? And we ended up in a Cyberman competition, which like normally I'm quite apprehensive to volunteer for stuff like that, but my friend Neve just looked at me and I looked at them and I was like, I'm just gonna have to do it. So but also I didn't realize I was up against you guys till like halfway through and I was like, oh god, it's the Wholala guys, like, oh my god, we're back and being against you. But yeah, it's always such a good, it's like the best Doctor Who thing to go to, I think. And I've been to like many a Doctor Who thing and it's the most special and like safe space, I think. Like it's just very safe.
So safe, so positive, so silly as well. Like and just such a ridiculous night. We like we said before, we both had our non-Doctor Who boyfriends with us, and they still had such a good time. And they were like, "Girl, I don't know what is going on, but this is a good time."
That makes it funnier though. They don't know what's going on.
Every so often I'd tap them on the shoulder and I'd be like, this is funny because Kylie Minogue played Astrid and that's why they're doing a cut. And they'd be like, yeah, it's fine. We got it. It's fine.
Yeah, we got it.
This is funny because the Absorbloff, then the pavement, and how do you explain that?
Trying to explain the Absorbloff holding the paper with Ursula in the pavement while lip syncing to Chasing Pavements was something else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how you begin to explain that to someone. Like what without having seen the episode. That's the most unexplainable thing. Was that your first Gallifrey Cabaret or did you go to the other one?
We've not been before.
Yeah, first one.
Yeah, so I mean, like I think I've only seen one act like more than once do the same thing. Like normally it's very, very different every time and do a lot of different activities. They always do competitions and it just means it's really fun for like everyone in the room for whatever reason. They try to cover like all eras of Doctor Who. That's something else that I find really special because sometimes you can go to Doctor Who things and you know that you might be the only Jodie Whittaker fan in the room, or like a lot of people are very open about their dislike for it. Whereas at Gallifrey Cabaret, it's like, I don't think there's really much room to just be hateful about anything. And they always cover like all eras if possible, and they make jokes at the right expense. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just like a really nice place to be. And I've never felt like, oh, they made it bad.
Yeah, basking in a shared love of Who and all of its silliness, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that the whole show is ridiculous, right? It's like objectively ridiculous. So
yeah,
I think there's no point taking any of it too serious.
I know. I was watching a compilation video yesterday. My housemate put on I don't know why, just a video of like best Doctor Who moments that people had picked from Twitter or something. And as they were going through, I was like, this makes Doctor Who look like a really bad show. And then my partner was like, Who is a really bad show? And we were just sat there like, yeah.
Yeah, wait, this isn't good.
It's like, it's not bad.
I think it's just the most absurd thing. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all here for it. But like when you put it pen to paper and you're like, okay, so there's this like thousands of year old alien and they're in a box and they fly around having sea little adventures that are almost always in Cardiff recently anyway. And it's just the most absurd thing on paper. But what drew you to the show? What like got you into the show?
I think it was Billy Piper, to be honest.
Yes.
It was just Billy Piper.
Stan.
I mean, I remember seeing a bit of Aliens of London on TV, like it was just on the background at my auntie's house, and it was the scene at the end where Savine pins someone up against the wall, like one of the politicians. And I remember seeing that and then like didn't really know what it was, and I was like, oh my god, what is this? And then it ended, and then I forgot about it because I was like, 8, and I just was like, yeah, I'll remember that one day. And then I caught a little bit of the regeneration. I was like, what the hell is going on? I love Rose so much. Forgot about it again completely. And then I don't know, my memory's quite hazy, but like what really got me into it was that I had gone, my mum picked me up after school, we went to like the corner shop where they had a million different magazines, and she was like, oh, like as a treat, like, it didn't happen often, but like as a treat you can pick whatever magazine you want. And like out of all of them, for some reason, I mean, this was like a newsagent with a lot of magazines, like it's not really the same now when you go into like a corner shop, but like it was a corner shop that just did every magazine. And I just for some reason picked the Doctor Who 2005 sticker book, and I can't remember whether I like remembered the characters and knew what it was that I'd picked up. But like in my brain, I don't remember knowing what it was. I just remember being like, I want that. And then I read it cover to cover. I read like every single word over and over and over, like because the sticker book covered, I think, every story from Rose to like Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, maybe.
Nice.
And I was like, I have to watch this now. Like I know everything about, and I love Rose. I think it was like I remember seeing Rose on the cover and be like Rose, like I want it for her. And then I think I switched on. My first episode was like school reunion, I think. Like that's when I was like, I'm going to watch this show, and I know what time it's on, and I'm going to watch it at that time. And then I just like never stopped watching it.
That's a fantastic start as well. School reunion is a great place to jump.
You couldn't really jump in like that
lucky.
place.
I know, and sometimes I worry that I've got it wrong. And I'm like, was it Tooth and Claw? But I don't think it was. I'm pretty sure it was School Reunion.
Yeah.
Tooth and Claw is impressive.
I also know the exact sticker book you're talking about. It was the one with David and Billy, and then behind was like a regenerating Christopher Eccleston, right? Yeah. That photo of Billy would grab my attention as well. Like it was such a great sticker book.
Yeah. She's just like such an icon, and I think I must have remembered her from I think I must have remembered her vaguely. I don't really know, like the story's so hazy, but like in my head I was like, saw this sticker book, didn't really know what it was, but I knew that I wanted it, and then I read it. So it's almost like I read about all the adventures before I'd even really seen them. And then I remember like going into Tesco the next week after school reunion and begging my mum to get me Doctor Who Adventures that had like the TARDIS clock on the front of it. Like I have such clear memories of that. Couldn't tell you much else about
as well, because like there's so little else you remember from your life at the age of 8 or 9, right? Like I can't tell you anything I did in school like at that time, really. You have such few memories, and it's funny that like Doctor Who is such a standout thing that just like stamped itself on us. But I've got Billy over my shoulder. I mean, I
keep looking at it.
I know.
I really want that.
It's this great picture. Like for anyone who can't see this, it's a picture of her from this Guardian photo shoot a few months back. It's
I know
such a slay picture of her. It looks so good. I cut it out from the newspaper and put it in a frame.
Oh my God,
but I have to keep angling my laptop and I'm on a work call because it looks really seductive in any other context where you don't know it's Billy Piper.
Yeah, you're like, what is that in the background? It kind of actually, if you don't know who that is, it kind of looks like a boy band member from the early 2000s as well.
With the curtains, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly.
What's in the sticker book? The sticker book, like, is it episode descriptions and stickers? Is that?
It was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, Sam, but it was like they had, and I had one in front of me recently because one of my friends had theirs out, and I must get mine for my mum's when I eventually like go through all my stuff that's still there. But I think it was like the Doctor, Rose Tyler, and then like every episode. So and then it would have bits in between, kind of similar to how the annual is now set out. Where it covers every episode, but I think it was like description of every episode and then stickers that match the episode. So I have a load of them in my house at the moment because me and my friend Crystal did a video for her YouTube recently where we like unboxed them, unpacked them, whatever you call it. And some of them were just like, why is this a sticker? But then you remember that it's like it was episode by episode. You'd have like characters, and then what they did, I think they brought one out every year till like 2011. So they had one for series 5, but not for series 6. And when it would come out would be like right at the beginning of the series. So like the series 3 one, I think covered from Idiot's Lantern to like the middle of the next series. Do you know what I mean? It was always like, because it came out around the same time as the series started, so it'd be like almost like a weird halfway point. But it's always really cool because I kind of remember during RTD1, it's so weird not to just call it like the RTD era.
I know, right?
RTD1. But I remember there was so many things where like they just hit the merch at the right time, so that like they'd get you excited for those episodes that were coming up by putting it in the sticker book. Or they had a book called The Inside Story. That was an amazing book about the behind the scenes of series 1 and 2, and they had a preview for series 3 in the back of it. Like that's just not so. I mean, I really hope they start doing that again now, but it's actually something that I kind of forgot they used to do that, because people would interact with the merch, the website, show all together, and it was all one thing that I have really caught. And like you were just saying about having those weird cool memories, you were just like, you don't remember anything from school. The only school things I remember are because of Doctor Who. Like I can tell
exactly the same
things in my life. Like I remember going on a school trip in year 5. I nearly said series 5 then. In year 5, and the only reason I really remember this trip was because it was between Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead, and I like came back and I had to miss one of them, and like it was like
I always make jokes with my family because I'm assuming similar to you, like Doctor Who kid through and through. I date like big events in my life as to what Doctor Who episode was coming out around that time. So my mum will be like, "Oh, do you remember when we like went to so and so auntie's birthday and it was a beach party?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do, because Forest of the Dead was coming out then." Or like, "Do you remember this?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I do, because New Earth was coming out then, and we were talking about the new the series and stuff." And I literally use it as a calendar.
I do as well, and like me and my housemate always talk about this, because he'll be like, "Oh yeah, I remember my auntie's birthday in Ireland and I had to watch Into the Dalek under a bed," and I'm just like, how do we? I mean, like it's great. I mean, my memory's also really bad. Like I don't really understand why I remember stuff like that. You know,
same.
it must just be like this formative thing where there's something you care about so much that you just remember.
You keep going back over it. We're going to be elderly, and they're going to put on old episodes of Who for us. They're going to have to like dig it out. There'll be no DVD players left at that time.
I actually think I could tell you where I was for every single episode of New Who. Like I can tell you where I watched almost all of them.
That is a talent. That is a talent. And I think the thing is, like you were saying with the sticker book, this was before a time when we had our phones. This is even pre like iPlayer, I want to say, when maybe like series like 1, 2, 3 were coming out. And the reason I love like the sticker book's a really great example is that I would then bring it away on holiday with me. There was also, I don't know if you had it, the book of the scripts of series 1, and I would like go away with it, and that would be my way of like consuming that media when it wasn't on TV, because when it wasn't on TV, unless you like recorded it to VHS, you couldn't go back to it. So I would then have the sticker book and I'd be on holiday and like filling it in and reminding myself like, oh, the Celine episode, and exactly like you said, like you'd get excited for the episodes coming up. They'd have like the same amount, I think, in the next time trailer for the next season. Like they'd have like the screenshots and stuff from that, and they could tease it, and it was just such a great way to like keep in touch with the show when it wasn't on.
Yeah, it's weird because I guess we just wouldn't really, I mean, look, who knows what they're going to do with the next era, but now, I mean, we just like everything's so accessible, and I still really love reading Doctor Who media and reading Doctor Who books, but like nobody I know really does. Like everyone remembers books from that RTD1, but like none of my friends, I mean, like most of my friends are Doctor Who fans, and like nobody really reads the books like I do, and I'm like, but or like the behind the scenes and all that is like, because I guess the show is so accessible and the fandom is so accessible now through online stuff, that we don't really have that way of consuming them, and like, you know, like how generations before us had the Target books. I was trying to think of when the first series was where like it transitioned over from what we're saying about like consuming it outside of watching it, and it was probably around Matt Smith's era, actually.
It must have
like
been.
when everything was online.
I can think of an example of when the switch was. Do you remember they had for the series 5 behind the scenes, I think they'd stopped doing, maybe Confidential had moved to being online. I might have got that wrong, but they definitely had Charlie McDonnell. She was Charlie So Cool Like, and they had her do the behind the scenes with Matt Smith.
And the badger, Charlie's badger.
When she gave the badger.
And Charlie was inside a red Dalek at one point as well. There was something going on there. So I think they'd recognized that it was kind of the YouTube generation kind of up and coming then. And I think that must be where they started to follow the fans, was on YouTube, maybe?
God, you just like unlock, you know, when like someone unlocks the memory and you're like, God, I forgot that happened.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, because I remember watching Charlie since maybe like 2007.
That was my introduction to YouTube. Yeah.
Oh my God.
They were like one of the OG YouTubers.
How to make tea.
Yeah.
That was the video I saw. It's how to make a cup of tea.
God. gosh, I mean, like, and then when they started doing Doctor Who stuff and like Chameleon Circuit and all of that sort of thing, I just remember being like, oh, this is like, it's so weird. Like they really were transitioning into the YouTube generation. Oh, it's so weird that you just unlock, like, you know, you just get like an unlocked memory. I forgot that happened.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Chameleon Circuit did one of the music videos for the TARDIS set in like 2013?
In Matt Smith's TARDIS, yeah.
Don't need to be talking about most of the members of Chameleon Circuit, but it was cool that they got to do that. So interesting to see how it's changed, isn't it? And like how like our core memories are around physical media.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I guess like generations just under us probably wouldn't maybe have that as much.
No.
Like,
No.
I hope they do still do physical media stuff for this new era. Like I know they're probably
endure.
I think they're probably going to want to do a lot of like online stuff because obviously that's where the world is at. But
I choose to believe that physical media is making a heavy comeback, but I don't know if that's based on any data apart from me really liking it. So it could just be all in my head. Sadly.
I think you're bringing in the move into physical media with the amount that you're getting.
It will definitely be like a nostalgia thing, right? Because you know, we've got. I think that everything from before about 2010 is really coming back into fashion, and I think people are like slowly realizing, like, you know, the connection we have with like physical media, or like how much better for you it is to read a book rather than be on the computer all day and stuff like that. I think it'll be a nostalgia thing, like how record players came back. It'll be like CD players, and I mean, like, I don't know if you've seen, but like lots of pop artists bring out their albums on like cassettes and sell them on their website. It's definitely a thing. Like, people want to own stuff they care about.
I think there's a lot of that, because I think all the media we own now, well, we don't own any of it, right? That's the point. You kind of rent access to it. You stream everything, and I think people like to feel that they have something that's kind of their copy of it.
It's tangible.
Knowing that you've got, like, you know, even your copy of the sticker book is still at home with your mum, you know, is nice, and that's yours to keep, and that's your version of it. I think that's the nice bit.
Yeah, like even this. I remember like asking them, sorry, I'm saying this as if people can see, I'm just holding a copy of it because I had it to hand. But like, I remember when it was coming out, people asked me if there was going to be a digital version, and like, version. And I asked the publisher, and they were like, you just wouldn't do a digital version of it because it's a book that you write in, and it's a book that you scribble in, and you do puzzles in, and it's like, it's not. I don't really know what you would get out of a digital version unless you're physically unable to like use a physical version for whatever reason, or you need a screen reader to read out and stuff like that, which you know is obviously like needed. But like, remember puzzle books? Remember doing Doctor Who puzzle books when you were a kid, like the little activity books and stuff? Like, that's what I was really excited about when I was writing this, because I was like, it feels like that.
Talking about physical, tangible things that you can own, this is the perfect kind of book to have, because, I mean, again, for anyone who can't see this, I'm holding the Doctor Who quiz book. It's the kind of thing you can have on your bedside table and go through in an evening and just do a couple questions and keep coming back to it. And it is the perfect, it's so reminiscent. When I was looking through it, it's so reminiscent to exactly what you were saying. Like, do you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books? I think it was David Tennant's era, like Doctor Who quizzes you'd get at the back of Doctor Who Adventures. Like, it just brought me straight back to doing all of that, except there's a couple harder questions in this, I'll say that as well.
That's so nice. Yeah, it's so nice to hear you say that, because I think when you're making something, you're in your own little bubble, and you're like, well, I'm doing what I think would suit everyone. Like, I wanted to make sure there's something for most people in there. But I guess like you are just influenced by what you've grown up with. So in my head, I was like, I want to have like quizzes to find out which companion you are, for like, just for fun, like a BuzzFeed quiz or a crossword, or, you know, I would have liked to have done like a Sudoku or something, but we just like didn't have I don't think we really had the time. But yeah, no, I think that's definitely maybe in the back of my mind somewhere, that inspiration came from all those books I've consumed. And so many Doctor Who books consumed.
Where did the dream come from? How did this all come about, the idea of making a quiz book? Was this like a lifelong childhood dream of always wanting to write your own book? Was that something you used to do? You know, like on Microsoft Word, I always used to write my own stories and design the front page, and I'd probably waste a lot of ink as well printing stuff off as well. I'm just like,
God, when I was a kid, I used to print off you just reminded me, you know, the Doctor Who wallpapers for your desktop that the website would put up.
Yes,
so I'd
absolutely.
print off all the pictures that were the desktop, but you know, like when you print on an A4 page, it goes half of the page, so it would just be like the top half of the page would be like a picture of Cassandra or something, and then I would write like a description or like a piece of writing or like some notes and be like, this is Cassandra.
You were doing alt text before it was needed.
I mean, I just It must have been, I don't even really know why. I think I must have been trying to print them to like put up. I was quite an odd kid. I would like keep things in folders and I would collect like newspaper cutouts and like, you know, all the pictures
I
that I
totally
could.
get that though. I get that.
Yeah,
That
it's
resonates with me on
definitely a
some
document.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I did always want to write. Yes, I definitely always wanted to write a Doctor Who book. And like, I think if you were like, what is your dream thing that you have always wanted to do? It would be to write a Doctor Who book. And I wrote like stories when I was a kid. I wrote like a Rose Tyler spin-off like thing, like never
Oh,
showed
I love
anyone.
that.
Things like that. And then when I was in like year one, I won like a story competition because I wrote a book about a character called the Runaway Hamburger. I can't really remember anything about it other than that, but it sounds really fun. And then I think like when I grew up, I just had like such a shit time in school and growing up and stuff that I just stopped writing really. Like I didn't even realize I liked it because I was just like not in a good place like in my teens. And then when I started doing the Time Ladies, that was sort of a fluke because I was like, I just want to create like a space where like I feel comfortable existing as a Doctor Who fan and for other women and non-binary people and stuff like that to feel comfortable. And then I was just like writing things for the blog and I was like, oh, I like writing. That's the thing that I like. And it's really weird when you suffer with like hard teenage years or mental health stuff. Like when you find something you like when you're growing into an adult, you're like, oh shit, like I actually enjoy doing something like this is it. And I think like from there I straight away was like, okay, like I wanna write about Doctor Who, like, and I want to do it professionally, like if possible. And I've always wanted to, you know, write a book. And I was always like coming up with ideas and I never really like found the right time to pitch anything to any publishers or anything like that. And then when I was coming up with pitches and stuff last year, because my goal last year was like, I came into the new year and I was like, this year I'm going to write a Doctor Who book. Don't know how it's going to happen, but like I will. And then I was writing up pictures and stuff. And then like all of a sudden and out of the blue, like a publisher just contacted me and was like, do you want to write a Doctor Who book?
Wow.
Oh my
It's kind of
God.
really weird. They just contacted me and they were like, we have a Doctor Who writing opportunity. Would you be interested? And I was like, it was kind of odd because I knew that the publisher didn't have the Doctor Who license.
Yeah.
Like the publisher was Bonnier. But I did know that Bonnier were like a well-known publisher. And I was like, okay, like I'll see what this is. And we ended up having a conversation. And she was like, we need a quiz book and we want it to be like our Christmas gift book. So I guess the company, every year they do like a consumer I guess like a gift book that is representative of something that's like popular at the time. So the year before they did Bridgerton, similar book, but it was Bridgerton. And I think she must have heard about Shooty and David and everything like that. And the way she described it was like, you know, I know that there are 3 specials at the end of the year and Shooty's just been announced, David Tennant's coming back, like, you know, would you write us a book? We really want to do a Doctor Who quiz book thing. And I was like, this sounds fake. Like
this is too good to be true.
Yeah, basically. And then she, like, the first thing she said was, how would you do it? And so I basically just got to like choose exactly how I would do it and send her back like a description. And then we just sort of went from there. And I think they were looking for a fan to write a book that would connect with fans.
Nice.
And yeah, I don't really know. She just asked me to do it and I said yes.
It's amazing.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I had been doing I've been trying to do more Doctor Who writing. So I was writing for the Radio Times and stuff like that. So I like to think that sort of helped my name, like my name come up for her or whatever it was. But yeah, it was a very quick turnaround.
Yeah. Did you get to keep most of your ideas? Did it change a lot? What you'd kind of suggested, what they came back with?
Not like I could do whatever I wanted. Like it was all. Wow. I mean, I was like, it's one of those things where you're kind of like, wow, this is a lot, but also I was like made for this, you know, like I know exactly what I would do. And the only kind of specification that she gave me was they want it to be accessible so that it will appeal to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Which I was like, that's great because I'm all about that. They wanted it to be kind of like personal as well, so that's why we wanted to do there's like a little, before every chapter there's like a page and a half of me just like chatting about Doctor Who. So like on the Dalek chapter I sort of talk about what the Daleks are and what they mean and like all sorts of stuff like that. So it meant that I actually got to talk about my love for Doctor Who as well as like write quiz questions and write puzzles and stuff like that. And so yeah, really that the only specifications were like, we want it to be 15 chapters and we want it to be easy, medium, hard, and we want puzzles in there. Like that was kind of it. So then I was kind of like, well, and she went, how would you do it? And I was like, well, like the easy answer would be to go by doctor. But if you go by doctor, you're going to alienate like people straight away, because a lot of people haven't seen Classic Who. So, like they're going to open the book and skip to the back anyway, or the other way around. Like there might be people who are Classic Who fans and wouldn't read the end of it. You know what I mean? So I was like, if we split it into categories that make sense to people, it's going to be easier to digest. So you have companions, you have the doctor, you have the Daleks, like really simple, easy categories. And then, because I got to choose what I wanted to do, it was really nice, because I was just like, well, I want to do a chapter about alien worlds, and I want to do a chapter about spin-offs, kind of, which is called Defenders of the Earth. It's just about like all of the Doctor's friends on Earth. And then I got to add redacted questions in there, like the people that hired me to do this didn't know anything about Doctor Who. So I have completely free reign, and I got to be involved in like every part of it. And I was like, at the end of the day, my name's on the front of this, so I need this to be perfect in the exact way I would do it, and they were totally happy with that. So yeah, it's really nice.
I mean, reading it as a fan, it is so apparent to me that this was written not by a company trying to like grab interest for the show or something. Like, this was written by a fan for fans. And I think for me, I love like how far the book goes into different things. Obviously there's like the typical question answers, but then also like the mini games and stuff. I love the one, I think it's History Mystery, the one where you're pairing the historical figure into the episode they were in, and little things like that. There's just so many different areas it reaches, even within a chapter, like within the topic of a chapter. There's so many different things that it covers, and it just really keeps you engaged as a fan, and like throws you back to like all of the classic quiz books we were saying about, but also really challenges you as well. Like there's a lot of hard questions you put in here as well. So that I found that really, really great.
Oh, I'm glad you said that, because I mean, I tend not to read the reviews all the time, but there was one review on Amazon that was like, the person that wrote this clearly does not care about Doctor Who and just had the easiest question. There was not one question in this book that I couldn't answer. And I was like, maybe you should go outside there.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly, that final chapter, I tested it on my friend that I know that knows Doctor Who the best, who works very closely with Doctor Who, and I knew that like this was the person to test on, and they found some of them hard. So I was like, okay, that's when you've got a good balance. Like, the first chapter is so easy and almost like silly easy, but you want everyone to be able to find something in there. Like my friend's mum came over and was reading it. Like, I want her to be able to know who played the Sixth Doctor. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not fun if do you know what I mean? Like, it's just not fun if there's not variation in there. And I thought, that also made it easier for me to split up the chapters as well, because I was like, well, I think most people know everything about the Doctor and the companions, but maybe not everything about Gallifrey. Like, Gallifrey is clearly the hardest chapter. And I found that because I find Gallifrey so confusing. But
we've got a great group to test it on. I was going to say, from the Time team and the Time ladies, quite a lot in the Who community now, who've actually gone on to do quite a lot of Doctor Who projects as well, which is pretty cool. It's nice, kind of like, because me and Sam are quite new to like being in the Who community and around kind of equally Who obsessed people. Like, I mean, we've only been doing this for like 6 months or so. And it's very nice to just be around people who are just like this passionate about like, the niche bits of like Doctor Who and characters who were in it for one episode and, all of that. So, I mean, you had more than a few people, I guess, to go to as well to like test this out with, who are, real Who aficionados.
Yeah, it was a weird one, because at first I was like, I mean, like, really, I didn't want anybody else's input, in the sense that I just wanted to know that I could do it myself. Because I think I've been told so often in the Doctor Who world that I don't know enough, or that I'm not a true fan, especially when I did the Time ladies. Like, the amount of people that were just really it's especially hard to like be a woman in Doctor Who fandom, I think, and we were always questioned and always told like that we didn't know enough, and just like never offered the same opportunities and stuff as like maybe other people that were guys and things like that. And so I just really wanted to like prove to myself that I could do it, and then it wasn't anything, that it wasn't me that was like a bad fan or a bad person. It was just these other people. So like I really didn't show many people until I finished it, to be honest. Like, I didn't really test it on people. My partner went through most everything with me, just because he's also a massive Doctor Who fan, and we lived together, and he was just like, let me know if things made sense. And obviously the publisher didn't know anything about Doctor Who, so I couldn't really test anything on that. But it's weird, I don't actually think I really tested it on anyone other than my partner and maybe my housemate until it was like literally done.
Yeah.
And it was a really, really quick turnaround as well. So it was quite hard. It was like I had to write in about 6 weeks.
Wow.
So I couldn't really just like send, like I couldn't be like, oh, by the way, like, can you just read this entire chapter? Like I didn't really have time to actually show people. So, you know, it's, but I did have a little party when I brought it out and I had loads of friends around and then they all got to be tested on it. It was kind of fun because it was nice to see that I hadn't like messed it up and you know, I didn't want everyone to be able to just get all the questions right. So
was the party walking around with the quiz book and just you were like, welcome to the party, now sit down, we are doing, school is in session and we are doing the quiz?
Yeah, it actually was quite funny because my friend David was like, if you're having a party, we have to do some of the book. And I hadn't really thought about it because I was just like, I just want to like, it was my birthday as well. So I was like, I just want to have a few drinks and celebrate all of this stuff. And then my friend David was like, no, we have to have an actual quiz. So we kind of took it in turns, like we went up against each other, like 2 people at a time. And that was quite funny to see. And when it started to come out, it was really scary. I was like, oh God, like, what if people are going to think it's too easy? What if people are going to think it's too hard? What if I've made a mistake? I think there's like a couple of mistakes in the book that are like issues that were like formatting issues. Like maybe the publisher would change the questions around and then didn't match up to the answers and things like that. I don't think factually I got anything massively wrong unless I just haven't noticed.
Some people, I guess, are very precious about who to an unhealthy degree. And in a way which I guess makes it a little less fun for everyone else, you know, when people jump to correct or criticize or get quite nasty about something that, as I think we all agree, is objectively quite ridiculous in the first place, right? That kind of we hear out of a shared love of anyway. And I think we should talk about the Time Ladies a bit as well, because of, I think, the need that you saw absolutely to create a safe space for female Doctor Who fans, particularly, and how that came about and your experiences with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it really came about because, and I'm going to try not to be like too negative because like it was such, I mean, obviously I don't do it anymore, the Time Ladies, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. Like I wouldn't really have a writing career now if it wasn't for that. But I made it because I just like didn't really feel like there was a platform, or that I would just like, I just didn't really see myself anywhere. Like so I guess when I first created it and I started it with actually 4 people and then it sort of went down to 2. It was just a group of us who were like, we don't really massively see ourselves in a lot of fandom spaces. I think at the time, really the only women that were doing Doctor Who like platform stuff were like the Verity podcast and Whovian Feminism, who were great, but they were all American. So I was like, this is just going to be my take. And actually it was mostly just for me to just like talk about Doctor Who. And I think at that point that I wanted to write about Doctor Who and I wanted to make a blog. And I was like, well, why not make it somewhere where I can include other people to do it too? Because I just wasn't seeing that anywhere. There was so many blogs and YouTube channels and websites that were all just run by men. And I knew that there were women out there that like Doctor Who, so I was just kind of confused by it. And at the time when I started it was the beginning of 2017. So Jodie hadn't been announced yet. And really the only stuff we had was like Bill was the companion and Sarah Dollard and Rachel Taylor. That was really the only, you know, source of like, oh, women in Doctor Who. And I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about stuff that you wouldn't see anywhere else. Like I wanted to do, what we started to do at the beginning was like I would do like makeup tutorials for like, because I worked as a makeup artist at the time. So I was like, you know, how to do the rose look or whatever, or like a cosplay thing, or I think I did an article towards the beginning about women's bodies in Doctor Who because nobody was talking about that, or if they were, like we would just get shouted at for talking about it. But you know, let's talk about how Clara's hips are too big, or whatever it is that's said in the show, and how it affects people and stuff. And I just wasn't seeing that content anywhere else, so that's sort of why it started. And then it was kind of an accident, really, because it, you know, I think we started it in March 2017, and then Jodie was announced in July 2017. And immediately everyone was coming to us because we were the only female, like they were coming to us and maybe like Whovian Feminism and a couple of other people like Emily Cook and stuff. They're really the only women in fandom that like BBC Radio could contact and get to talk about Doctor Who. Like they didn't really want the same guys anymore to talk about what a female doctor means or whatever it was. So it suddenly blew up quite a lot, like within the first few months. It's just really crazy.
Yeah.
How did you find it after, say, Jodie was announced and you suddenly were getting all these people interested in women's voices talking about Doctor Who? How did you find the change there compared to, say, before when it had only ever been male doctors?
Honestly, like my memory is like quite hazy because I think a lot of it like came with a lot of anxiety. So I think I've like pushed it to the back of my mind a little bit. And my friend that I did the blog with, we both like have quite a PTSD almost reaction to some stuff at the time, ladies.
Yeah.
But we do genuinely react in like quite like a bad way if we're reminded of certain stuff. Like it was really hard at times.
Yeah.
I think I just remember like all of a sudden we were getting BBC Radio would contact us, or that we were invited to stuff. People wanted to send us stuff like products, and we started getting sent products I think before Jodie was announced. So it was like immediately people could see the need for this like platform to help promote stuff and whatever. The change was quite weird though, because I look back at the time I was like, well, this is just super needed, like this is super relevant, we should be the type of people that are talking about Doctor Who, like alongside all the amazing people that have always done it, but also like add us to the mix too, and all that sort of thing. And I look back on it now, and there's a few things where I'm like, oh, they just tokenized us a little bit. Like these people just wanted me to talk about my experience as a woman in Doctor Who, or what a female doctor means. But then like I've just noticed that like a lot of women aren't really offered the same longevity in fandom as like men are. And it's very much like, well, you were important during that bit of that era because you spoke about your experiences. And it wasn't really until I started writing for the Radio Times and I realized they were actually interested in just me writing about Doctor Who. I got to do like a review of Worlds of Wonder, and I got to do a redacted article, and I was like, okay, that made me think, okay, finally, like someone doesn't just want me to write about my identity. I'm happy to do that, but I've just done that so much. There's only really so much you can say about what a female doctor means to you. And so I look back at it with like, I mean, within the first year of doing the Time Ladies, I was asked to write for the I newspaper and the New Statesman. Like those are really massive things I never thought I'd get to do, and really, really push like I think I did some work for the official Doctor Who website as well, and things like that, where I was like, this is an absolute dream come true. Like this is what I've always wanted to do. And then it stopped, and then it stopped after a bit. People almost got like a bit. I think we were getting more and more anxious and upset and like angry, and we were continually like facing a lot of shit. And then that culminated in like people getting angry at us for being angry. And then it came to a point where like in beginning of lockdown, I was like, I'm not feeling good. Like my friend that I was doing it with had basically already stopped. We'd stopped doing our podcast. We just weren't doing stuff as much. And I was like, the one thing I can't do during this beginning of this pandemic is force myself to do something I don't really want to do. And yeah, like I would never change any of it, because I think that getting to do the stuff that we did was amazing.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I think everybody who asked us to do stuff, their hearts were completely in the right place. There's just some things where I'm like, oh, I just, I wonder if they wanted me to do that because it was me as a person, or was it just like because I was the woman to write about Doctor Who, and does it really matter as long as I got to do it? I don't really know. It's just a thing I think about.
Do you feel like the conversation's improved at all now? Do you think, do you feel like at all like thinking about, you can do kind of a barometer check on the Who community now? I mean, it's difficult to say, right? I mean, like Twitter's a hellhole at the best of times, and that's where most of us kind of dwell.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know, but I don't know, what's your kind of sense on it?
Yeah, I mean, it is very difficult to say because there are so many different sides to Who fandom, and the main way I experience Doctor Who fandom is through Twitter and through the Time Ladies and through all the things that I've done. What I would say is that I see a lot of women on my Twitter going through the exact same things I did, and then I'll be trying to some of them be like, yeah, I went through this exact same thing, whether it's like being harassed or being like groomed or like just like all of these different. I'm almost like, sometimes I feel like sad because I was like, what I really wanted to do at the Time Ladies was like help stop things like that happening. And I don't really know whether we did or whether it even helped the landscape at all. But in other ways, it's like there are so many more women noticeably on my timeline now, or since Jodie's era. So that's obviously a great thing. Like so many young queer women as well. And I've made loads of friends with loads of women in the Who community. So I think it's like there's always going to be hard parts of it, and I try not to get too upset about it sometimes, because I see a lot of stuff on Twitter where I'm like, wow, nothing has changed. Like just even the way like Suze Kempner was being treated the other day, just for
Mm-hmm.
being announced as being part of Doctor Who, and I just thought, well, it's a wonder that women really even stay with it, to be honest. Like the way that they're treated, or I see the way that people respond to some female Doctor Who fans on Twitter, and I'm like, God, like no wonder we're all angry, and then we're not allowed to be angry. Like people get angry at us for being angry, and I think that's the worst part, is that I don't even feel comfortable talking about this, for example, on Twitter, because I think a lot of people just labelled me as angry.
I think that what is most notable, at least when I, who obviously can't have the same experiences as like yourself and other women go through in the Who community, when looking at your body of work from the Radio Times and even like within the sections of your quiz book and everything, it is just so noticeable how important what you're talking about is. And like my friend Ellie, my childhood friend, who's not really involved in like Doctor Who Twitter and stuff now, she kind of drifted off the show. We were just talking about Doctor Who and stuff recently, and she knows that we've been doing this podcast, and she said that she really wants to come on at some point to talk about being a woman in a Doctor Who fandom, because, and again, as someone who's not really in it right now, a big thing she felt growing up was that she didn't feel like she could take up the same amount of space a male Doctor Who fan might be taking up. And I think it made her feel quite alone in that regard. And I think that might be in part of the reason why she drifted away from the show. And looking at your body of work, even if you're not doing the time lady and stuff anymore, it, to me, who isn't experiencing those things directly, really puts a spotlight on it and makes it known, because it needs to be something talked about, and it needs to be loud, and it needs to be something that people are aware of. And it makes me really happy to hear, like you said, about seeing just more women on your timeline. And I'm seeing the same thing as someone who's quite new to like Doctor Who Twitter and stuff, seeing just how many female, trans, non-binary, queer Doctor Who fans are vocal. Like, I didn't realize how queer the Doctor Who community was really until I came back into it in my adulthood. And voices like yours as a part of the fandom aren't just like great, they're necessary and they're impressive. And it like we're just so grateful to have you talk about it on the podcast, because that's kind of our MO with what we wanted this podcast to be, is maybe not having the same people who always talk about the same things and always getting the loudest voice. It's people who need to be heard. So we're really grateful to like have you chat about these kinds of things.
Thank you. And I think, yeah, what you were just saying about your friend as well is that what I've found really hard, that like is mentally really heavy and like has really contributed to like poor mental health for me, is when I was a kid, I didn't really fit in anywhere, and Doctor Who was really a massive deal for me. It was kind of like one of the only things I really had, and I clung to Doctor Who as a coping mechanism, because I found it really hard to make friends, and I just found life very difficult for a multitude of reasons. Went through a lot of trauma and stuff. And then when I grew up, like as I was growing up, I was really severely like bullied for liking Doctor Who, bullied for being overweight, bullied for everything you can get bullied for as a kid. And then when I got older, and when I was sort of transitioning from a teen, like when I was leaving school, I kind of really got into Doctor Who fandom. I was really like not in a I had been in like a bad relationship, and it was just, I really threw myself into online fandom. And I think the one of the things I've struggled with the most is that like when the only community you want to be accepted in doesn't want you, when that's the only thing you've ever had, is really difficult. And that's something I still really struggle with. And that's why sometimes I feel like even though I'm doing Doctor Who stuff, sometimes I really question it and question whether I should be doing it. I mean, like many women that I know have had to completely step away from Doctor Who for either a long period of time or forever, because of how bad it's impacted them, just how they've been treated or what they've experienced. And even growing up being a Doctor Who fan, I was always told like it's a boys thing. Like you're a weirdo for liking this thing. Even my family, like, I mean, I wrote a little bit in my acknowledgements to my auntie, to be like, you know, thank you for accepting that and encouraging this hobby. I mean, she passed away years and years ago now, but again, like Doctor Who got me through that. And to always be told when you're a child that you're weird for liking this thing and it's a boys thing, you're not allowed, to then like come into it as an adult and it's sort of still be that way, but from people inside the fandom, is so weird.
I know.
And the worst part is that I don't really think that most of the community really understands that that's happening. Like I think a lot of people, and I'm not just saying like men, I think generally people don't understand like is microaggressions the right word, but like the sexism that happens without people even realizing it's happening.
I've got to say, I feel like I've been truly quite naive to a lot of it, because I think I've been quite lucky in that I think I've been able to steer clear of some of it a lot of the time. And I think from my perspective, quite naively, it has maybe seemed like, you know, a lot more of a a positive and progressive place than perhaps it always is.
Yeah.
And I think that me and Sam probably benefit, of course, that, you know, as much as being queer, we are two white men speaking on a podcast, and we probably are the faces you expect to see on a fan podcast. And so, you know, I think that, you know, is a privilege in itself. So it's difficult, I think, you know, and it's sad to hear, because Doctor Who especially really should be everyone's space, because, you know, I think the way I've seen it, and part of the reason we really love it is that it is for the weird kids. Like Doctor Who, I think is like,
And
is for the kids who
yeah.
like to collect the sticker books and everything else. Like that's, and who celebrate that as adults, right? And still
Yeah.
enjoy that being a part of our lives and a hobby that we still
Mm.
celebrate, I think, and don't, you know, and enjoy that quite freely. So
Yeah.
it is really sad to hear that, because I think it really should be everyone's space to kind of enjoy quite proudly and shamelessly in whatever way they want to, and
Yeah.
whichever parts of the show they enjoy the most, and you know, and gets into that really.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, it isn't always like that. Like, I think it really depends what you're interacting with, because there's all sorts of sides to Doctor Who fandom. There's like a cosplay community, there's like fan fiction communities, there's Twitter communities, there's all sorts of generations of fans.
Yeah.
And for me, like the way that I enjoy Doctor Who now is so different. I took a really long break from it, like over the pandemic, and completely readjusted my relationship to Doctor Who. And I think that like there is so much positivity within it. It's just, I think once you've been burnt by, like, what I found is that even though there are a lot of the time, the way I'm experiencing Doctor Who now is more positive than negative, because I've tailored the way that I talk about Doctor Who is that I don't really post about it on social media that much anymore, or if I do, it's only positive stuff. I don't really tweet about my opinions, especially not negative ones, because it's just not worth it. And I just really have a very close-knit group of friends that are all Doctor Who fans, who I just talk about Doctor Who with, or I watch Doctor Who with. And then I like read the books and stuff, and that's like my way of enjoying the show. I think it's, once you've been burnt like a few times, it really sticks with you, and it's hard to come back on into the world of Doctor Who, and like I see so much positivity all the time, and so much progression, and so many new people, and so many, like, what I've noticed recently is just like a lot of discussions that really needed to be had, like people are having. It's not really the most, I mean, Twitter's not the best way to be having these conversations, but I'm seeing people talk about things where I'm like, oh, you know what, it's good that people are bringing that up. And so, like, for the most part, I think that things probably are slightly more positive than maybe they were in like 2016. But I think it just really depends, because when I first came into it, there was, I mean, really, I was within a massive group of girls that were all Clara fans. Like, that was how I really was in my fandom in 2013 to 16, 17, was like, we were all Clara cosplayers. We were like, just love Clara. We love 12 Clara. We love, you know, it was like, there were so many women. So I think it just really depends how you experience it, and like how you deal with the shit that you have to deal with. Like, I think that sometimes I just have to take like big steps away from it and experience it in my own way, because otherwise the whole show is just tainted by like bad experiences. And it's obviously like not everyone is bad, and there's places like Gallifrey Cabaret, and you know, there's really, really good sides to Doctor Who that are really enjoyable. It's just hard, it's just really hard to let go of those like really difficult things you go through with it.
Thinking ahead to kind of the new era, which is, you know, unbelievably almost upon us. I think we're kind of 8 months away now from the specials and Doctor Who kind of potentially going pretty mainstream again. What is the kind of stuff that you'd like to see on screen, stuff that hasn't been done before, particularly in terms of kind of changes you might want to see in terms of the way that women are represented on the show, places we haven't explored, whatever that might mean to you? You know, what are you hoping we'll get a bit more of this time around?
Yeah, I think, God, that's such a hard question, because like there's just so much, like we just have really no idea, do we? I think that, I mean, like, it's going to be weird to go from having like the first female doctor to having two male doctors again. And I'd just like to see that, like, I would like to see a change in how male doctors are written, because I guess, you know, it's been a very long time since we've had a man play the Doctor. It's been since the end of 2017. And I just want to see a really like more modern and progressive version of a male Doctor. I mean, like, I think Doctor Who generally, and the Doctor as a character, is quite progressive, like we know that, but I want there to be less of the casual sexism as there was in maybe like past eras, which is like, it's a product of its time, so whatever. But you know, I really hope that we have, and I think that we probably will have, like, women take the spotlight as much as the male Doctor. You know, that's something I'm really hanging on to, I guess, because like the reason I started enjoying Doctor Who in the first place was because of how how strong those female characters were, and I feel that's a really overused word to say a strong female character, but how like impressive Rose was and how relatable she was, and I really want to see more of that in RTD2, and I'm sure we will get that.
Not R2D2.
I know, I say it so fast sometimes I literally say R2D2. I also just want to see like Doctor Who go to places that's really never gone before. Like Ncuti was talking about in an interview about, I think, going to Africa for something. I can't remember what it was. And I was like, yeah, like just tell more new stories from like just something completely different. I just want something completely different. And I'd like it to be, I don't know how to explain. I just would like there to be more diversity in stories that we maybe haven't seen. Like something I loved about the Chibnall era was how many places in the world we went to. Like we were always in like, it was always so global. I'd like to see that in RTD2.
I really hope that we continue the momentum that we saw in Jodie's era and Chibnall's era, where I always in my mind compare the Shakespeare Code to Rosa, where when Martha, who was the first like full-time Black companion, said like, oh, am I going to be okay here? And David Tennant's Doctor just kind of was like, oh, like just walk around like you own the place. And it was obviously written and like acted very like from the like white male perspective, and then seeing the difference in that between like Rosa, obviously it was Chibnall's era, but I can tell that it was there were so many more women involved in those stories and so many more people of color and people bring their own history and sort of experiences to those episodes, and it made it much more believable as an audience member, but it really like made you stop and think and put yourself in their shoes. And I really hope that for queer people, for women, through all different minorities and stuff, that we get to go to so many different places, but also hear behind the scenes so many people's stories through what's happening in the episode and through the characters that are in there. So that's kind of what I'm hoping we see in the next era.
Yeah, I think behind the scenes is like a massive thing actually. Like I really hope that we get a writer's room where it's really collaborative across the stories, because I think that like even if you're a male writer that's written the best story in the world, like you could always have someone else's opinion that, you know, like about the women. Like I really hope that it's really, because I think Chibnall's writer's room was quite collaborative across episodes. Like I think like Vinay Patel came up with the title for Arachnids in the UK and things like that. Like I want there to be that. And if we get any spin-offs as well, I really writer's room, you know, all different kinds of voices to create the best story. Because I think the thing is that I guess like behind the scenes, it's very easy to just like not really, you know, front facing, we can see that we've got like a female companion and, you know, the first male doctor of color and possibly queer doctor, but I'm not sure, and stuff like that. But it's like really matters behind the scenes as well, you know. So I really hope we get a lot of just new stuff, new voices behind the scenes.
But because I guess, as well, as a writer, there have been very few female writers of Doctor Who been credited, at least, you know, if you look back at, I think especially RTD1, I don't know if there was any female writers in that era. And
I think there was
shockingly
one or two,
few.
Helen Rayner wrote Daleks in Manhattan, Evolution of the Daleks. I think that might actually be it, though. I'm not sure.
I've seen some pie charts which were pretty damning. And I think a lot of that was largely, I guess, due to having 3 male showrunners who wanted to write a lot of their own episodes, I think especially RTD. And so I think you're right, it'll be interesting to see how do they tackle that, because the opportunities in the writer's room are so important as well to help people break into the industry, because Doctor Who is such a big machine now as well, I think, for giving people new opportunities too. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of that and who kind of, you know, it'd be nice to know that people got their start in Who, people who are fans then, who are adults now, who are maybe beginning in the industry.
Well, yes, that's what I was about to say. Yeah, like think about the people we got in 2005 were fans of classic Who that started writing in the 90s when Doctor Who wasn't on air, and then they got the opportunity to write it. There's a whole new generation of people now who are at that age where they should be writing the new Doctor Who, you know, new, whether it's like the TV show or spin-offs or books or whatever it is, like that, like we're all at the right age now. Like everyone I know, I mean, like I think wants to, right? Because all of the people that brought it back were this age, you know. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of new stuff they bring in, and I guess who. It's kind of an odd one, isn't it? Because we've sort of gone back in that we have a showrunner that's already sort of done it, and Julie and Jane have already done it, and Phil Collinson, and a lot of they brought back have already done it. So I'd be interested to see who they bring in that hasn't already done it, because I think that's where Doctor Who will shine, you know, having that collaboration between the two, like people that really know how to run Doctor Who, but also it can't always be that, you know, a bit of both.
Yeah.
That would be exciting, whatever happens then. I mean, like, I just feel like nobody really knows what's happening, and there's so much possibility. It's exciting to see it play out.
I'm very excited.
We were saying, even in regards to like the score and the soundtrack for the 60th, maybe I can see the 60th being like a real big nostalgia trip and a nod to the past. And obviously we know that Russell's going to be doing series 14 as well, going on from that. But with the music, we feel like it'd be great. You know, you've got David Tennant back, got Catherine Tate back, to have maybe like Murray Gold's iconic soundtrack for that duo and for those episodes. But then, because he's got such a plethora of amazing music already, there are so many people, we see them on Twitter all the time and on YouTube, people who are scoring, I mean, our theme made by Dalekium, so many people who are fans of the show growing up, exactly like you said, are now making products that are as good, if not better sometimes, than what you see on the show. And I'm so excited to hopefully see those people be getting the opportunities to shape Doctor Who in the way that like we as a community want it to be made, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive into some Twitter questions. Alasdair, do you want to jump with the first one?
Yes. Ethan says, it was so lovely to meet you at Gallifrey Cabaret, Beth. My question is, are there any other types of Doctor Who books you would like to write, or any books in general, and why?
Yes, the answer is I want to write all the books. I mean, look, I would write any Doctor Who book, to be honest. I would like to do I'd like to do a novel, or like a novelization. Or I'd like to write a short story anthology, maybe. I mean, but I mean, I love Doctor Who so much. I have so many book ideas. I'd write non-fiction, I'd write fiction. Like, there's nothing about Doctor Who that I probably wouldn't write about, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to like be one of the novels, like the tie-in novels, if they bring those back or something like that. And I'd like to do more storytelling, to be honest, because I haven't had a lot of fiction published, so it'd be great to get some Doctor Who fiction published, maybe officially. That's like the next dream. And yeah, I mean, book-wise, I have a million novel ideas every day. It's just having the time to sit down and write them. I would definitely like to. I mean, my thing is, I just really love writing all things. I would be happy to write anything. I just need to refine my path and my ideas, because I have so many things I want to do, really.
Nice.
So but I mean, I think most of all, I'd just like to carry on writing Doctor Who stuff. That's just a dream.
That's so exciting. That's so good. Well, on the line of that, Nick was saying, what did you find most difficult about writing your own book?
I think, like, for me, particularly with this book, it was like the fear of getting something wrong. Because if I was just writing my own novel or my own book about anything else, there's no fear of getting it wrong because it's your own thing. But Doctor Who is something that has a really long and vast and detailed and lore-heavy history that I wasn't alive for all of. And I actually don't think it's possible for everyone to know everything about Doctor Who, no matter what people say. And so my biggest fear was really just getting something wrong, and like maybe like just ruining it for someone, or maybe proving to those people that always told me that like I wasn't a good enough fan, that like I was going to get it wrong, you know. But I feel like there's always room for mistakes for these things. I don't really know how it's possible to know all Doctor Who things.
Yeah.
So I think that was the hardest bit, and I think writing it in 6 weeks was quite hard.
Yeah, great. And then the final question from Will is, what is your favorite book?
Is that like your favorite Doctor Who book or favorite book generally?
I think it means any book. I'd say any book.
I mean, The Handmaid's Tale was like the first thing that came to mind, because that was a book that, like, I'm not really good with favorite books, to be honest, because I read a lot of books and I forget things quite easily when it comes to books, because I just read them so fast.
Yeah.
The Handmaid's Tale is something that, like, when I read it a few years ago, really stuck with me. And it's just a really like iconic feminist story. And then, like, I'm trying to think of a good, like, a Doctor Who book. Actually, do you know what is like my favorite book that I've decided is my favorite book? Juno Dawson's book, Her Majesty's Royal Coven. I actually would say that was my favorite book. It is just, it's one of those books where, like, Juno Dawson is an incredible writer. It's about witches, which is just like really up my street, and it's got just so many diverse stories in it. But also it's like just got like Doctor Who references in it. And it's just like, you know, when you're doing something by someone like that and you're like, it's kind of, you know, I'm obsessed with Lockwood and Co at the moment, which is a show on Netflix, and it's the episode's written by Joy Wilkinson at Ed Heim, and it's just like, you know, when you're like, you can tell when a Doctor Who writer's got their hands on something. So I would actually say Handmaid's Tale or Her Majesty's Royal Coven. And then I'm trying to think if there's a Doctor Who book. I read many Doctor Who books. I really like the Rose novelisation, to be honest.
Yeah,
that's really good.
Right. I've got that
the one that really sticks with me. Yeah.
For me, with that one, it's the deep dive into what was the name of the electrician? What was it called? Wilson. What Wilson was doing the money? Like, what was his lottery scheme? Like the deep dive into that.
The detail in the lottery scheme is
we all needed that.
Yeah, it's wild.
New law unlocked. Oh well, Beth, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Wholala. I think a lot of the stuff we've covered today, it's so important for people to hear, and I'm really grateful that you've sort of felt safe to come into our space and sort of chat about it. So thank you so much, and thank you for giving us the best quiz book ever as well.
I know.
I'm so glad you guys like it.
Honestly, we do, and like really, really grateful for your time as well. It's been so lovely talking to you, very eye-opening as well, and always lovely to have another fan in the room, so it's not just
us two.
Driving each other up the walls.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a really nice chat.
You're extremely welcome. Anytime.
And do you have anything to promote? Anywhere that you want people to find you?
You can find, I do a little Doctor Who illustrated poetry project thing, which you can find on Instagram at Inked.Who. It's just basically where I write Doctor Who things, and then my friend illustrates them. We do that sometimes, and then buy the quiz book if you like Doctor Who books.
Buy the quiz book.
I love on most places.
I love the illustration and the little poem that you guys did for the 18th anniversary that you posted recently. That one was really fun.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, we've been doing it for a couple of years, and we don't do it that often because like we just both don't have like a massive amount of time. But I really wanted to do something for that anniversary, and yeah, it's good fun. It's different. It's like something I've never seen really anyone else do, and I'm sure it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really enjoy doing it. So.
Well, I love it. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Wholala. Please join the conversation. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Wholala Pod, or you can rewatch old episodes of the podcast also at Wholala Pod.
And until next time.
Thanks so much, Beth.
Bye-bye.